to the second day of the 9th International Conference of Global Citizenship Education. I am Ji Sun-mi from UpCU. On behalf of the organizers, I would like to express our heartfelt appreciation for your participation in this event. We have an engaging program lined up for you today, starting with a quick recap of yesterday's session. For those who attended yesterday, this will be an excellent opportunity to reflect on what you have gained and learned yesterday. And for those who may have missed any sessions yesterday, this snapshot will provide you with a concise overview of the main discussions we had. Due to time constraints, I will propose a couple of keywords describing each session. Actually, this approach is inspired by Mr. Dylan Ray, who was the facilitator of Plenary Session 2 yesterday. Thank you, Dylan, for inspiring me. First, the keynote speech by Professor Audrey Osler, she emphasized hope, justice, and compassion in a fractured world, highlighting the importance of youth voices and addressing global challenges. During the plenary session 1, moderated by Professor Han Seung-mi, Professor Rawan discussed humanitarian crisis and refugee systems, introducing the immobility chessboard concept to categorize different types of movement. His Excellency Ambassador Peter Ungurek shared personal experiences with racism and hate speech, emphasizing the role of GCED in combating discrimination and hatred. Professor Aikihara Hunt addressed challenges in achieving sustainable peace and human security amid geopolitical tensions. She advocated for a people-centric approach to security, focusing on root causes of conflict and engaging non-traditional actors. Professor Lee Sang-uk discussed ethics in AI development and governance, highlighting the need for inclusive and affordable ethical frameworks. In the plenary session 2, facilitated by Mr. Dylan Ray, Professor Rudy's personal experience with violence and kidnapping in Basilan led her to transition from aid work to education and dialogue-focused initiatives. Professor Tanya emphasized the importance of storytelling in shaping perceptions and raising awareness. During the 3 concurrent sessions, one of the workshops led by social designer Doing and Mr. Jeff explored discrimination and social inclusion through interactive role-playing exercises. Another workshop facilitated by M3 and Ms. Leah focused on its initiatives incorporating GCED into fashion education and conducting teacher training workshops. The last workshop, led by Khan and Hubbard, introduced innovative visual thinking tools to address ethical dilemmas. As we dive into today's agenda, I encourage you to actively participate, share your insights, and engage in meaningful discussions. Without further ado, let's begin our Day 2 program. I would like to introduce today's first segment, which is Plenary Session 3, where we turn our attention to the powerful voices of youth, advocating peace as change agent. I'd like to invite speakers and moderators to the stage. Please give them a big round of applause. In this session, our young speakers will share their experiences, insights, and initiatives through brief presentations and intensive discussions. Now, I would like to invite Dr. Karena Menji-Valentine, Senior Lecturer in Education at CQ University in Australia. Dr. Karena, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Sung-Mai, and welcome to day 2. I'd like to begin by acknowledging the traditional owners of the lands on which we meet today and from which you have all travelled, for they hold the wisdoms of generations and the stories. We pay our respects to their elders, past, present, and emerging, and thank them and respect them. We heard a lot about stories yesterday. We heard a lot about the power of narratives, and we're going to hear some more stories today. But the important point is, as Professor Osler reminded us yesterday, is that some of those stories must come from the next generation, even from the youngest of children. Now, I can't offer you any school children this morning to provide their perspectives, but what I can offer you is the voice of youth that you see here on the table. And this morning, that voice of youth is going to be represented by 2 members of the GCED Youth Network, and from here in Korea, we are going to welcome a peacemaker who specialises in that field. We will, at the end of the session, have an opportunity for questions. So please make a little note if there's something that interests you along the way, and then we'll have an opportunity to invite you to ask those questions towards the end of our session. But you're not here to hear from me, so I want to pass straight over to our guests. And our first guest today is from Egypt. Nora is a core team member of the GCED Youth Network, where she aims to empower youth around the world by fostering their understanding of GCED and the SDGs. She's a senior emergency medicine resident working firsthand with minorities and refugees. During her medical school years, she was project coordinator for several projects in the areas of education, public and sexual reproductive health. As an internationally certified trainer, she has delivered more than 150 hours of training to participants from almost 30 countries on topics like advocacy, innovation, leadership, and project management. And she provides voluntary membership online to youth on their projects and personal and professional development. Please join me in welcoming Nora.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Karena. Good morning, everyone. It's an honor to be here as we gather to discuss revitalizing multilateralism for peace through global citizenship education, which sounds like an amazing tongue twister. If you can say that 3 times, come just meet me after the session and I'll give you anything. So basically, multilateralism is like a team sport. It's like having a bunch of superheroes teaming up to fight against a common enemy. In this situation, we're saying the enemy would be conflict, ignorance, and prejudice. Unfortunately, in our world, countries and country leaders, they grow up and become the boy who refuses to pass the ball. They forget how to play together. They compete and they argue, and they lose sight of the bigger goal, which is peace. No single country or institution can save the world alone. It takes the founding principles of multilateralism, such as consultation, solidarity, and inclusion to save the world. However, recently we've seen a shift. So there's rising nationalism, there's political divides, and a lack of trust. Those have weakened the bonds that we have. This trend is not only counterproductive, but we find it also dangerous. So how do we bring back the spirit of working together? This is where GCED comes. GCED is more than just learning about different cultures. There are 4 key elements of GCED. First of all is the human rights education, where it empowers individuals to claim their rights and, more importantly, to defend the rights of others. There is the global awareness part, where it fosters the understanding of global issues and empowers a person to feel like as a part of a more global world and community, to recognize their interconnectedness. And there is the intercultural understanding. Not only does GCED promote respect respect for cultural diversity. It also encourages intercultural dialogue. So we come and sit together to fight the prejudices and the stereotypes that we have. And then there's the active citizenship part, where you can participate in civic life and contribute to the development of the communities. So as GCED Youth Network, we have seen a few challenges while working on this topic. First of all would be the lack of funding. We have been fortunate enough to have AppSEU as our partner for multiple of the projects, and but not a lot of other networks or youth have the same opportunity. And then there is also multiple issues such as you know, like coming together, or how we can sometimes find it difficult in capacity building, for example. There's lack of teaching. So in yesterday's panel, Navigating Through the Refugee Crisis, I resonated with Ms. Rawan, I'm sorry, as I remembered this lady coming to the ER with her daughter. They had both fled Sudan after the war. She was coming with difficulty of breathing. And we run a few tests. We find out that the mother is having what we can call it in simpler terms. So her whole systems are shutting down. Her body is no longer working. And the daughter is there. She knows her mother's past medical history really well. She knows all the medications that she has been taking but stopped due to the war. And she looks very well taken care of. We decide that we will be escorting her, admitting her to the emergency department in the intensive care unit. And then we were sitting back and thinking, she looks well taken care of. Why did she arrive at the ER so late, at such a late stage of her illness? So we come to know that prior to this, the mother and her daughter, they had been internally displaced at first in Sudan. For 8 months, they didn't know anything about each other, whether they were alive or not. And then 8 months later, the daughter gets moved to Egypt, where she doesn't even know where her mother is. So she keeps looking. I mean, in a country with 110 million humans, nationals, and there's like 646,000 refugees from multiple countries in Egypt. How would that be difficult or easy? It would not be. So she doesn't even know if she's there or not. And do you know when the first day that she finally met her mother through a lot of connections? It was 1 hour before presenting to the ER. It was that day. So that lady went into cardiac arrest, which was unfortunately foreseen, and she did not respond to CPR. And there was the young daughter sitting next to her mother, who she had only seen sick for 1 hour and sobbing next to a corpse for the next one. So we've been thinking there must be information that they take from refugees and how to connect them and register them, the linked cases we call it. But that brings up the question whether or not those systems are working. Are they put into work? Are they efficient? Perhaps not. So what about different countries? For example, in Egypt, we're fortunate enough to have that anyone standing on Egyptian land, they can access emergency departments in public hospitals, free of charge without insurance, but that's not the case everywhere. We had met also a young female Sudanese physician who can't practice because her diploma cannot be verified, which also sheds a light on such a waste of talent that we have due to these such crises. And we started working with the communities to conduct sessions. But I strongly believe in what Ms. Rawan had said about how humanitarian aid alone is not enough. We need more state-centric solutions. So when refugees are signed up or they are registered, they take the vaccination information and they sometimes even revaccinate them for something they have taken. They ask them about infectious diseases. But all these questions, and they're not asked about their comorbidities. So are we only concerned about how to protect ourselves from them and not what will benefit them? Because yeah, in that context, there is an us and there is a them coming to our place of living. it got me thinking if we can do more. So what can each of us do to embrace this cause? It can be by embracing our roles as global citizens. So first of all, in getting involved in the local, national, and international initiatives, advocating for policies that will promote peace and collaboration. And most importantly, in my opinion, would be to educate others. I urge you to share the knowledge that you gain from here, from this such marvelous event with your communities, as change starts with single step, like Mr. Lim was telling us about the little person doing a little thing. So in concluding, revitalizing multilateralism through GCED is not really an academic kind of concept. It's more of a call to action. So let's be the change makers, the educators, and the advocates for a world where cooperation would triumph over conflicts. As we leave this conference, I hope that we can carry forward the spirit of GCED. And I don't know if I get a cookie or not, because the time is still going, and I'm done. Thank you so much.
I can't promise you a prize, but you do have more time for your questions later. Thank you so very much, Nora. And it speaks to the core of this conference in terms of multilateralism. It resonated with me that the need for this national approach combined with a multinational approach. And your question posed, when we're vaccinating people coming in, are we just protecting ourselves, or are we really caring for the people who are coming in and being displaced? Thank you so much for that. Okay, I would like to now introduce our next speaker, Oshan. And Oshan comes to us from Sri Lanka, where he is a peace education and transdisciplinary social development practitioner that works in the intersections of peace building, conflict transformation, non-violence, ethical leadership, and social empowerment. He has years of experience working in diverse communities across the Asia Pacific, with special focus in education for sustainability, youth advocacy, and values-based capacity building. His current engagement with the Magna Institute heavily focuses on the approaches for alternative learning strategies, such as gamification, cultural reimagination, story building, radical arts, and play-based learning. They build on the principles of critical empowerment, social transformation, and collective liberation. Oshan is a firm believer in exploring the alternatives to redefine our worldviews, abolishing harmful structures, and strengthening global citizenship in global settings. Please welcome Oshan.
Yes, thank you very much, everyone. So Noora mentioned about a cookie, and now I'm feeling hungry. So I will try to get through the discussion first. So first of all, it's a great privilege to be here talking about youth and peace within the spectrums of GCED, which is something that I can talk for hours, but I'm going to be very brief today. So my background is actually in peace building and peace education. So with my work for over 6 to 8 years, I have been working with a lot of youth communities from Sri Lanka, but also within the South Asia and Asia Pacific regions, which has exposed me to a lot of interesting experiences and stories which I can share. But today, I'm going to be very precise about what I think, in my perspective, the role of youth in peace and GCED is, especially relating to our topic of multilateralism for peace. So I would like to talk about the fact that my work in transitional justice and reconciliation has given me something very profound as an idea, which is young people are mostly seen as a vulnerable population who are also kind of in a disadvantaged place because they are most vulnerable to notions of violent extremism and radicalization, and also whatever the harmful narrative that is going on in a nation or a global setting. But I would also like to argue that young people are also a key part of first responders who are actually mobilizing themselves and take action whenever there is a crisis. So this is very clearly seen when we look at what's happening around us. Whenever there is a crisis or a conflict in a community, young people, they are the first ones to know. I think this is very clear indication of how connected they are and how tech savvy they are, I would say, because they can create such a big power within their communities that can actually shift narratives and actually shift what is happening around them and impact the communities in a very broad way. So I would also like to remind us that the young people's work has been recognized over the years, and there have been multilateral and global partnerships and frameworks that actually put their work into center stage. For example, United Nations Security Council Resolution 2250, the Youth, Peace and Security Agenda really works around these cases, promoting the young people's participation and also their engagement to peace and security agenda. And this really tells us how globally connected they can be and what sort of a powerful force they can be. But when it comes to local levels, I think localizing these global narratives and global structures is still struggling, especially where I'm coming from, where I have been working around. So this is also something that we need to kind of understand when young people try to do good work in peace building and peace education. They are also facing such a great challenge because this disconnection between the global and local understandings of young people's role in peace building. So I would like to focus on three key points here, how young people's work on peace can be related to GCED. So the first one is innovation for peace in local and global settings. I believe that young people are doing so much work to innovate and decentralize and decolonize peace building and peace education itself within their own settings, using so many cultural and traditional and also very innovative and thought-provoking approaches which are very transformational. And as practitioners in GCED, I think there are a lot of examples we can take out of it. For example, young people, they are using technology and they are also very concerned about climate and other things that actually matters for their futures. And they come up with their own solutions. There are so many young entrepreneurs, social entrepreneurs who are making these problems into solutions in their communities, and they do it by themselves, mostly sometimes without any external support. So this itself is such an inspiration when we look at young people's role in peace and GCED. Secondly, the need for empowering ethical conduct and values-based leadership. I know I vouch that young people can be such a powerful force, but they also struggle when it comes to ethical conduct and values-based implementation sometimes. So as the champions in GCED, I think we also have a role to support these young generation youth activities to redefine their applications in their communities and around the world to make it more ethical with ethics-based education and ethics education, and also to help them connect these applications to values that are promoted in GCED. So I do know that young people, when they do get mobilized and when they act upon their local issues, they have the best intentions in mind, but sometimes these applications can be quite sometimes be criticized by different perspectives. So I think as young peoples are taking center stage, it is also important to allow them to learn and build their capacities for ethical conduct and values-based practice. And these values can be directly connected to what we are talking about today, how we revitalize multilateralism for peace through GCED. And GCED values can be directly related to these ethical applications of peace building and peace education. And thirdly, the last point is the culture of volunteerism as a powerful tool for youth-led peace activities. I know when it comes to Asia Pacific and most parts of the world, culture of volunteerism is something embedded into our traditions and cultures. And young people, youth who are engaging in peace work, mostly work as volunteers. They don't have any income or a profit or any affiliation that they get benefited through this work. They do this work because they have the spirit of volunteerism and they actually dream for a culture of peace and nonviolence. So we need to also support these volunteering young people who are working around the ideas of peace and GCED to keep engaging in their work. Sometimes it is very obvious that we are also struggling as like young volunteers who are working in peace. How do we keep doing this work that we do, but also be sustainable with our work and also our livelihood? Especially after the COVID-19 pandemic, we saw there was a lot of impact that was done towards, impacted the volunteer activities around the globe, but I think we should not let it die down. The culture of volunteerism is actually what we will have to depend on when we are working for sustainable solutions, for improving and advancing GCED and peace and sustainability that we want to achieve in our peaceful and sustainable futures. So these 3 points has been keeping me awake for a long time. So I think this is also something we can think around and work around. And in order to support the young peace builders and peace activists who are working around the threads of GCED, we need to also think about these specific topics, and we need to engage in discussion. So I think that's going to be it for now, but I'm looking forward to discuss more with the Q&A session. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Shoshan. 3 very, very important points that you're bringing to us. And as somebody who's the past generation sitting here, I think also a key reminder to us as to how we can support the young people coming through. As you mentioned, the young people bring that combination of tradition with innovation and tech savvy, and they bring that spirit of volunteerism. And I fear that too often our generation don't build them up in that. They volunteer in our organization and we get them to photocopy and make coffee, and instead of really, really listening and really encouraging them. It also brings to mind the UN rights of the child that says that the children should have a say in things that matter to them in an age-appropriate way. And I think that's somewhere that we, as the older generation, can support as this next generation of young leaders come through to give a little bit of a guidance around that ethical and values-based leadership. Some really important points. Thank you very much, Shoshan. Our next speaker is going to honour us by speaking in her mother tongue of Korean. So if you need an English translation, you might like to grab your translators at this point. I'd like to introduce Myung-Yu. Myung is an action research manager at Peace Momo and a researcher at the Feminist Institute for Peace Studies, right here in Seoul, Korea. She has worked as an anti-militarist campaigns focusing on disarmament, arms trades, and early warning. By researching and campaigning on various fields of the peace movement, such as the arms industry, climate impacts of military activities and military budget, she seeks to develop a discourse that links militarism with people's everyday lives. She approaches her activism as a form of civic education, hoping to spread awareness about the right to resist war. Before joining Peace Momo, she worked as a campaigner for Amnesty International Korea and World Without War, campaigning for conscientious objection, LGBTI rights in the military and arms trade. She studied sociology at the University College London in the UK and wrote a dissertation on youth democracy in social movements, focusing on youth participation in the 2016-17 Candlelight Movement here in South Korea. Please welcome Myung-jin.
네, 안녕하세요. 소개해 주셔서 감사합니다. 저는 김한민영이라고 하고요. 소개해 주셨던 것처럼 피스모모라고 하는 한국의 평화 그리고 교육 단체에서 활동하고 있습니다. 저는 오늘 이야기를 어떻게 구성할까 생각하다가 제가 어떻게 해서 평화운동에 발을 들이게 됐는지 소개를 해드리면 좋겠다 해서 이야기를 시작하려고 합니다. 제가 평화운동을 만난 것은 2018년이었는데요. 그때 저는 신입 인권활동가로 활동하고 있었습니다. 그때 한국에 어떤 일이 있었냐면요. 예멘에서 전쟁을 피해서 한국으로 떠나온 난민 500여 명이 제주도에 도착하는 일이 있었습니다. 한국 전역에서 난민들을 수용하지 말라고 외치는 혐오 집회가 막 열리는 그런 시기였습니다. 난민들을 혐오하는 게시글이 인터넷을 뒤덮었고요. 서울 한복판에서는 난민 혐오 집회들이 열렸습니다. 시민사회는 이에 대항해서 난민 권리를 옹호하기 위한 활동을 조직을 했고 저는 그중에 집회를 조직을 하면서 난민 혐오 집회에 대항해서 난민들을 수용하라고 외치는 집회를 지키고 있었습니다. 그 집회에서 혐오 집회를 보면서 이런 생각을 했어요. 이렇게 자비도 없고 혐오로 가득한 이 사회에서 어떻게 살아가야 하나 너무너무 무력감을 느꼈습니다. 예멘 전쟁에서 한국산 무기가 쓰이고 있다는 사실을 알게 된 건 그 다음에였습니다. 국내 평화단체들이 함께 꾸린 무기 박람회에 저항하고자 하는 캠페인의 일환으로 하는 이벤트에 참여하면서였는데요. 한국의 대형 무기 회사에서 만든 수류탄 그리고 미사일 같은 무기들이 예멘 전쟁에서 쓰이고 있다는 것을 알게 되었고 저는 그 사실을 알면서 뒤통수를 한 대 꽉 세게 얻어맞은 것 같은 기분이 들었습니다. 난민들이 한국에 오기 전에 겪은 전쟁이라는 사건들을 더 이상 낯설게 볼 수 없었던 그런 계기가 되었습니다. 그래서 저는 그때부터 할 일이 더 생겼다고 생각했어요. 난민 혐오에 맞서고 정부의 난민 협약을 이행하라고 요구하는 것에 더해서 해야 될 일이 하나 더 생긴 것이지요. 이들이 겪은 전쟁에서 내가 어떻게 연루되어 있는지 발견하고 그 책임의 무게를 지는 것. 난민 혐오 사회에 살면서 느낀 무력감이 책임감으로 변화된 순간이었습니다. 무기 수출 세계 9위인 한국은 지구 곳곳에서 일어나고 있는 전쟁과 학살에 대한 책임이 이미 정말 무겁습니다. 예멘뿐만 아니라 팔레스타인, 미얀마, 웨스트파푸아, 태국, 바레인 등 분쟁과 탄압을 오래 겪어오고 있는 나라들에서 한국산 무기가 많은 사람들을 겨누고 있습니다. 현 정부는 무기 산업을 한국의 신성장 동력으로 삼겠다면서 선언을 했는데요. 세계 곳곳에서 일어나고 있는 분쟁과 탄압이 내가 살고 있는 사회의 경제 성장의 동력이 된다면 그 사회에 살고 있는 저 그리고 제 이웃들은 이 지구 반대편에서 탄압과 분쟁을 겪고 있는 이웃들의 삶에 어떤 책임을 져야 하는 걸까요? 저는 이 고민을 더 많은 사람들과 함께 나누고 싶었습니다. 그래서 저는 친구들과 함께 한국의 무기박람회에서 전시되어 있는 탱크 위에 올라갔습니다. 한국산 무기가 홍보되고 거래되는 무기박람회에 전시된 탱크 위에서 방해 행동을 펼친 것인데요. 방위산업의 이윤, 이꼴 누군가의 죽음이라는 대형 현수막을 펼쳐들고 구호를 외쳤습니다. 그리고 평화의 의미를 담아서 기타와 바이올린을 연주했습니다. 우리가 탱크 위에 올라갔던 그 순간에도 누군가의 머리 위에는 폭탄이 떨어지고 있었습니다. 그리고 그 현장에서는 제가 탱크 위에 올라갔던 그 현장에서는 그로부터 돈을 버는 사람들이 모여 있었습니다. 전쟁에 쓰이는 무기가 팔려나가는 곳에서 그 무기로 삶을 잃은 사람들을 애도하고 기억하는 일로서 이 가해를 멈추라고 말하고 싶었습니다. 탱크 위에 올라간 액션으로 저희는 1,800만 원의 벌금을 받고 이에 대항해서 2년 동안 재판을 받고 있는 중입니다. 재판을 받는 일은 너무 지치는 일이지만 그 결과로 이전보다 훨씬 많은 수의 사람들이 한국의 무기 수출의 실상을 알고 비판의 목소리에 함께 해주고 계십니다. 전쟁으로 돈을 버는 시스템에 저항하는 사람들이 점점 더 많아질 때, 점점 더 많은 사람들이 일상에서 그 시스템을 거부할 때 전쟁을 멈출 힘이 우리 안에서 조금씩 더 생겨날 수 있지 않을까요? 저는 그래서 전쟁을 멈추는 힘을 고민하는 세계 시민사회 교육, 세계 시민 교육은 무엇을 질문해야 될까라는 것을 여러분과 함께 고민하고 싶었습니다. 그래서 질문과 저항의 언어로서 교육이 구성될 때 우리 삶에서 전쟁을 그리고 전쟁을 지속하는 시스템이 어떻게 연루되어 있는가를 질문할 수 있을 거라고 생각합니다. 그래서 그 질문들이 우리 일상을 점점 더 채워갈 때 전쟁에 저항할 수 있는 힘이 더 생겨나지 않을까 하는 생각을 여러분과 함께 나누면서 세계 시민 교육의 공동체가 어떤 질문을 우리 사회에 던질 것인가 라는 고민을 이 자리에서 나눌 수 있었으면 좋겠다고 생각하며 제 발표를 마치겠습니다. 감사합니다.
Thank you so very much. Firstly, thank you for your courage. It takes a lot to stand up to such a powerful institution such as those who create military equipment. So please take our congratulations to you and your organization as you continue your fight. I think, me and you, one of the things that you remind us is a conversation that I was having at our table yesterday, is sometimes we have to think the difference in GCED between the good citizen and the active social justice citizen. And sometimes those things align and sometimes they don't. And I think a young gentleman I was speaking to at our table put it beautifully. He's relatively new to GCED and was trying to understand it. And he said, basically, you're trying to create an atmosphere or an environment of harmony that can include dissent, that can include voices. And I think that's a very powerful message from your presentation here today, that we need to allow that dissent, we need to allow those voices, because that's the only way that we're truly going to change the world. Thank you again. We're talking about some very serious and very urgent topics here in our panel this morning. But we're going to take our lead here from Oshan and the organisation that he works, that we learn through play. We learn through games. We learn through connecting. So to that end, I'd like to introduce you to the first international GCED game show. And we're going to have a little session now where our contestants here are going to answer some questions according to what comes up on the board. So if we could have our selection up on the board there, please. And we can get our contestants to pick some cards. Again, I can't promise fabulous prizes, but I can guarantee you the audience's appreciation. So, our first contestant, ladies and gentlemen, here today are on our international game show quiz. I would like to introduce Nora. Nora, pick your first card.
C.
Oh, we're going for C, and C is I'd like you. This is a particular one where it's not so much a question as picking a term. We're going to pick a term from question C here, and you're going to tell us in about 2 to 3 minutes, what does that term mean to you and your work?
My eyes immediately went to cultural sensitivity, and I'd like to address it, but please take this with a little bit like a grain of salt, because so there are two very different aspects when approaching cultural sensitivity that I believe we need to modify a little bit. So there was once I was in it was a GCED workshop abroad in a different country. I'm traveling and I'm doing this and presenting my work, and everyone is amazing there. And then someone comes up to me, and he's also an amazing person, active in GCED, and he goes like, "You're such a brilliant young lady." I'm like, "Yay!" And then, "Too bad you're oppressed." And that's like, huh? Like who oppressed me? Where? So that really got me thinking that sometimes we can be working on those topics, but then deep down inside there'd be like a size of a sesame seed of prejudice that we must still have. So we might be willing to help plants, but we're not really willing to help people in concentration camps. I mean, I would help people in concentration camps, but not if they were a different religion. You know, this sort of approach. So, like, I hope that we would not have this idea. I hope that everyone working on GCD would be inclusive wholeheartedly. They would not judge someone's choice of clothes or what they believe in. And then there's the absolutely other aspect of trying to be culturally too sensitive, where there was once, it was actually the opposite situation. We were in Egypt, and then there's amazing group of people doing pediatric surgeries all over the world, and they're traveling, they're doing it out of their organization's pocket and their own time. And then there was one young man among them. He was not really young, he was quite old, but he would come to me, and there's the parent of one of the children. So he's asking me, so she wears something we call niqab. You might, I've definitely seen it, so where like only her eyes are showed and she covers her face. So that's what she believes in. And he comes to me and asks about it. I say, personally, I do not believe it's a part of my religion, but to each their own, and she believes that it is. So that's why she's practicing it. And then he goes, oh, I don't want to be offensive, but I want to know, when I talk to her, can I look her in the eyes? And then I'll be like, fortunately, someone from his team got up and was like, where else are you going to look? Like, at the end of the day, that's still a human being. You're still, why are you trying to be too sensitive and too not offending and on the fence, and forgetting that it's just a human being and it's a human interaction to know how to talk to another human being. So yeah, I think that just resonated with me.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for that answer, Nora. And we have the expression that the eyes are the window to the soul. And as you say, if that's all you can see, or whether you can see the whole thing, if you look at those eyes, that's where you're probably seeing the answers. And we all have that window. So thank you so much. Right, back to our game. And ladies and gentlemen, my next contestant in the game today is Oshan. Oshan, would you like to pick your post-it?
Yes, I'm going to select E and hope education is there.
We're going for E. We're assuming here, but we'll see what comes. Okay. So we have some words for you to select. What does one of those terms mean for you and your work?
Yeah, I was initially thinking about education, but I'm going to pick empowerment. Because I feel like, yes, I think education, of course, is important, but I think when it comes to empowerment, I feel like there's much more than the eye see. Most of the time, especially when you are working with young people, what we usually see happening is young people become beneficiaries of the programs that are implemented by organizations or like the development practitioners. They don't think about empowerment much. They think about, okay, what kind of a program can we do and what kind of goods or like things that we can give to them. But I feel like empowerment goes much longer way, but especially when you think about who are you going to work with in the future? For example, who is going to be the torchbearers of the future? Empowerment comes to play in many more aspects. It's not just giving goods or knowledge, it's also about creating a platform for the young people to actually come out and share their thoughts about some things and maybe become part of that development process or peace building process more actively as global citizens rather than just become the beneficiaries of a program and be benefited by whatever you are trying to do. So I feel one of the things that we can do when we are engaging young people for GCED and peace is that making them an active partner of the program itself and making them empowered to take their own actions and create their own realities, take their own initiatives rather than creating the path for them. So then they will be able to be more versatile and more creative and also more relatable to the cultures and communities they are coming from. And I think that's the essence of GCED also in a way.
Yeah, fabulous answer. Thank you so much, Osha. And I think it's linked so very strongly to the mistake we make in schools. Professor Oslo, if I may borrow your expression, as always, we treat them as citizens in waiting and use citizens in the participatory sense there. And I think a lot of, as you say, NGO programs, a lot of school programs, we're training them up or filling up their gas tank for something that's going to happen in the future rather than empowering them with their voice and the possibilities now. Thank you for that wonderful answer. Let's move on to our next contestant. So, what is your choice?
Well, I'd like to go for G.
And can we have G? There we go. Which word resonates with you?
Geopolitics. 한국의 지정학적 위치를 생각해 보면 한국은 정말 군사주의가 만연한 나라입니다. 세계적으로도 많은 무기를 팔고 있기도 하고 많이 무기를 사고 있기도 하고요. 군사비 지출로는 세계 10위에 위치해 있습니다. 이는 한국의 분단 상황이 70년 넘게 지속되고 있는 어떤 그런 대치 상태에 있기 때문이기도 한데요. 그런 상황에서 한국 사회의 절반 이상의 인구가 군대를 가고 있기도 하죠. 그래서 이 군대라는 것이 얼마나 한국 사회에 많은 영향을 끼치고 있는가를 생각하면 그것의 교육에 대한 영향에 대해서도 당연히 생각할 수밖에 없게 합니다. 예를 들어 볼 텐데요. 한국에 매년 어린이날이 되면 많은 군부대에서 군부대 체험 행사를 엽니다. 그래서 어린이들이 군부대의 입장에서 무기를 체험하고 군복을 입고 사진을 찍고 또 무기 박람회 같은 곳에 가서 무기를 체험하고 또 직접 만져보고 또 VR 기계 같은 걸로 군사훈련을 체험하는 그런 프로그램들이 많이 진행이 되고 있는데요. 피스모모는 그런 군사훈련, 군사 프로그램의 비판의 목소리를 많이 내고 있습니다. 왜냐하면 이것이 우리가 지금 이 시대에 교육으로서 가져야 될 메시지와는 전혀 반대에 있다고 생각하기 때문입니다. 군대에 가서 어떤 프로그램을 체험하는 것은 군대 문화 그리고 군대 무기를 우러러보게 만들고 어떤 갈등이 있을 때 힘으로써 해결하는 걸 당연하게 여기도록 만듭니다. 그리고 힘의 질서에 의해서 위계가 만들어지고 강자와 약자가 만들어지는 걸 자연스럽게 체화되게 만듭니다. 그래서 우리가 지금 살고 있는 이 사회에 전쟁이 만연한 현실, 그리고 지금도 누군가의 머리 위로는 폭탄이 떨어지고 있고 아까 누라가 말씀하신 것처럼 어떤 사람들은 난민이 되어서 너무 많은 어려움들을 겪고 있는 이 현실을 생각할 때 이 군대를 우러러보게 하고 이 힘에 의해서 어떤 질서가 만들어지는 게 자연스럽게 만드는 것이 교육에서 할 수 있는 일인가라는 것을 생각을 해봐야 된다고 생각을 합니다. 그래서 네. 그래서 세계 시민 교육이 우리 사회에 만연해 있는 군대 문화 그리고 군사주의를 함께 고민해 주셨으면 합니다.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. And a perfect word for you and your work. Thank you very much, Min Young. Righto, back to our game. I think from the first round, ladies and gentlemen, we'll give 10 points to every speaker. What do you think? 10 points? Okay, let's move on to our next round. In the next round, the contestants will be turning a card, but this time there will be a question behind that card, and we will be asking them 2 to 3 minutes to answer that question. Do we not have another round? Yes. We have our post-it notes back. And contestant number 1, Nora, which particular card would you like?
This one, because I'm wondering what I want to pick. So 7? Yeah, please.
Okay. What makes you skeptical or doubtful about your work for social change? How are you dealing with that skepticism?
Oh, oops. This really hits a string because I'm someone who's really high on self-doubt. But when it comes to my social change work, something that had always been bugging me is that there are too many issues to tackle in the world. So when I first joined the NGO work, I was 19 years old. And then I started working on a peace project where we would bring dialogue. So we would bring random people from the university. We'd sit them down and we make them pick a side and then try to argue for that, trying to bring them. And then I moved to having there was a project on fighting stigma against HIV-positive AIDS patients or humans, specifically for doctors, so and young physicians and medical students, because that affects them a lot. And although we do have an oath for the patient's privacy, it's usually like, where is the HIV? Yeah, you know, that patient, you know, it's next to that patient. Yeah, it goes something like that. So we really found an issue that we needed to tackle there. And then I also worked on anti-sexual harassment project. I found myself a little bit, am I really not having a focus? Do I not have a mission in life? Am I going all over the place? So this was something that made me doubtful. And we have a proverb in Egyptian that goes something like صاحب بالين كذاب. Basically, if you have two interests, you're lying to yourself. You cannot really tackle two things at the same time. But my mom, bless her soul, she says that our ancestors was wrong about that. So how I am dealing with that specifically was through thinking that if there are too many issues to work on, then just go for it. Just do whatever you can. Just pursue this route or that one, and just do whatever you can at this moment. Then you find something else, also go for it as well. You don't have to think about that. And then something also apart from that would be thinking about sometimes the small impact our work might have. Like you sit down and be like, I'm just spreading awareness among 50 humans. Is this really beneficial? Am I doing something worth it? And that goes to make us think about how, sometimes capacity building. So you might have stopped working with NGOs or with people directly, but then you're training people, and those people are going to implement their projects and make change in the lives. And there was once we had a major project on anti-sexual harassment that went for 5 years. One of the major things that we changed was having a policy of safe university, so like an anti-gender-based violence unit. But still, that I'm not sure if that changed someone's life or not. We had advocacy, we had lots of things going on, but it was just only something like an activity where we had an online Google form where women would submit their stories, and then we would just upload them. It costs £0, and it does not take a lot of time. But someone actually came out of this activity and told us that this had changed her life because she was bound with guilt a lot. So, yeah.
Fabulous. Thank you so very much. And I think you bring up two wonderful points in that. I don't want to stand on your applause, but two wonderful points we were discussing over dinner last night, the concept of dignity. And I think there you brought up the, personal dignity, but also maintaining the dignity of those around you, I think is really point in the work that we do. And seems to be my morning for cliches, but that whole idea that the journey starts with one step. And you might not know all the pathways that you're going to take on that journey. But as you say, if you don't take that first step, and I feel for so many young people, not just young people, so many people that go, oh, but what can I do? It's too big, it's too hard. It's like take that first step, and it's amazing which door opens or pathway presents itself. So thank you. Again, a fabulous answer. Right-ho, it's time to move on to our next contestant. Another big decision to make. Oh, Shan, which is your post-it?
Yes, I think I will go with one of my lucky numbers here, number 9.
Okay, can we flip number 9? Number 9. Okay, talking inclusion. How are you working with other stakeholders, including those who are less represented?
Right. I think when it comes to stakeholders, for me at least, like there are different levels of stakeholders. For like less represented stakeholders would be the ones like who are most marginalized in the communities. Usually we work with persons with disabilities and also indigenous communities who actually doesn't have any voice at all in national policy making platforms. So what I have tried is like when it's not the matter of like giving them a platform, it's also needed, but what is also important is making them inclusive and accessible. So it's not a matter of like, okay, you have this platform where you can come and share your thoughts, but what are the other things, what are the other barriers that make it difficult for them? So looking at these matters and actually intentively asking these questions is very important. And I think stakeholders, when it comes to especially the ones who bear more power, it's very difficult to kind of get their influence if there's no interest. So we need to find ways where we can actually create interest over certain issues that we want to talk about first in order to get their full participation and acknowledgement to what we are doing. So in this day and age, we are looking more towards collaboration, co-creation, and that creates co-ownership. So that is the approach that I have been following, the 3 C's. So when you actually try to create that co-creation, it could be for co-creation of knowledge, co-creation of change, co-creation of resources. But at the end, what happens is there's a shared responsibility and there's shared ownership. The co-ownership actually matters to see like how far we can go, how sustainable it can be. And this has worked so far because then the communities, regardless if they are less represented, but if they are coming from more power, if they have been there from the beginning, not like parachuted in along the way, it can actually make a real difference because they know like where we started and what was the idea from the beginning and what were the intentions behind it, what mutual benefit that each of them can achieve, then it really makes a difference. So I think working with the stakeholders, we want to see them as collaborators and knowledge brokers and the indigenous and local knowledge holders, rather than seeing them as like disconnected stakeholder or a power bearer in the system. So making that inclusion happen and that co-creation and collaboration happen is the key to make that shared responsibility and co-ownership.
Thank you very much. I love your 3 C's. I'm going to write them down when I get off the stage. And I think that point that you make about accessibility is really important. I think sometimes we think in terms of design and, you know, accessibility for physical impairments, but I think sometimes we need to stop and think about what might be the cultural accessibility that we need to do, or what might be something as simple as the confidence accessibility to bring people into this conversation. So again, fabulously, really important points. Thank you so much, Oshan. Okay. And to our third and final contestant in this round, Mignon, make your choice.
I'm going to choose question number 6.
Right, question number 6. What has frustrated? Oh, I can almost see the answer bubbling in you here, but please, I want to hear it. What has frustrated or angered you in your work for social change?
제가 활동을 하면서 종종 힘이 빠지는 순간들이 있는데요. 제가 아무래도 군사주의 혹은 군대를 비판하는 활동을 많이 하다 보니까 제가 활동하는 기사라든지 혹은 소셜미디어 포스트에는 이런 댓글이 많이 달립니다. 군대도 안 갔다 온 여자가 뭘 알아? 라는 댓글이 많이 달리는데요. 사실 이런 댓글 낯설지 않습니다. 제가 지금보다 더 어렸을 때 혹은 청소년이었을 때는 어린 게 뭘 알아? 라는 말을 많이 들었었죠. 이런 말들의 이면에는 보호라는 말이 자리하고 있는 것 같습니다. 왜냐하면 제가 사는 이 사회는 군대가 보호하고 있다라는 신화가 지배하는 사회이기 때문입니다. 더 많은 무기, 더 많은 군대, 더 많은 군사 기지가 우리를 지켜줄 거라는 그런 환상 속에 구성되어 있는 사회이고, 군대에 가지 않는 여성들 혹은 어떤 정상성을 지니지 않은 남성들, 그리고 장애를 가진 시민들은 군대가 보호해주는 어떤 혜택에 받고 있는 사람들로 취급되는 것이 보통의 인식인 것 같습니다. 그런데 우리가 사는 사회를 조금만 뒤집어서 생각해 보면 군대가 과연 무엇을 지키는가라는 질문이 필요하다고 생각합니다. 이 기후위기가 시급한 이 상황에 전쟁 그 자체는 아주 탄소 집약적인 활동입니다. 그리고 전쟁을 준비하기 위해서 더 많은 무기와 더 많은 돈이 군비로 쓰일 때 우리가 기후위기 대응에 쓰일 수 있는 자원들은 점점 더 축소되고 있고요. 더 많은 탄소들이 군사 훈련과 활동으로 인해서 배출이 되고 있는 상황입니다. 그리고 점점 더 많은 군비 경쟁을 생각할 때 그로부터 고조되고 있는 전쟁의 위협 속에서 우리 모두가 살고 있다는 사실을 기억하면 군대가 과연 지켜주는 것이 무엇인가라는 생각을 하게 합니다. 오히려 그 보호 속에 살고 있는 사람들, 여성들, 군대에 가지 않는 사람들을 2등 시민으로 취급하면서 말할 권리가 없는 사람들로 만들어버리고 맙니다. 이것은 제가 청소년 때 들었던 너는 우리의 보호 아래 있어야 되니까 조금 더 커서 이야기해 라고 말해줬던 어떤 담론들과도 연결이 되어 있다고 생각하는데요. 우리가 정말 지키고 싶어 하는 것이 사랑이고 우정이고 인권이고 평등이라면 우리는 그 보호주의라는 말이 지키는 것에 대해서 질문을 던져야 된다고 생각합니다. 그 보호주의라는 말이 우리가 지키고 싶어하는 가치에 대해서 말할 수 있는 권리를 빼앗아가고 있기 때문입니다. 그래서 보호주의라는 신화에 우리가 저항할 수 있을 때 우리가 정말 지키고 싶은 우정, 사랑, 평등 같은 것을 진짜 지킬 수 있지 않을까라는 생각을 하게 됩니다. 그래서 그런 댓글들을 받을 때 힘이 빠지기는 하지만 그래도 이 보호주의 뒤에 숨겨져 있는 어떤 신화들을 우리가 부숴야 된다라는 신념으로 좀 극복을 하고 있는 것 같습니다.
Fantastic. Thank you so very much. And yes, that frustration of shutting people out of the conversation. You're too young. You didn't serve. What would you know? For that round, I think 11 out of 10. What do you think? Yes? Okay. My timekeeper tells me that we're under the 10-minute mark towards the end of our session. So instead of going to our third round of cards, I'd like to go to you, our studio audience here at the game show today. And I'd ask, could you pop your hand up? There are some roving mics. I see one hand over here already. If somebody has a microphone they could bring. I also see a question up the back here. So I'm going to go to the question at the front here, and then I'll follow it up with the question at the back. Is there a microphone heading in this direction, please?
Thank you so much. My name is Rachel Parker. I'm from the Australian Council for Educational Research. Thank you, Karina and colleagues, for an incredible panel. My question is for Min Young. Incredible story. I'm so inspired by your work, your courage. I'd like to know how your education has prepared you to become someone who makes such incredible connections, who has this innate ability to critically think about the situation, the geopolitical situation you referred to, and all of the different connections between climate change and weapons manufacturing and refugees in South Korea. Can you share a bit about how your education has prepared you for this incredible role you're taking?
굉장히 오랜 시간이 걸리는 작업이라고 생각합니다. 네, 한 가지 소개시켜 드리고 싶은 것은 피스 모모의 교육 환경에 대해서 좀 소개를 시켜드리고 싶어요. 피스 모모라는 단체의 모모는 모두가 모두로부터 배운다라는 뜻에서 왔습니다. 그래서 굉장히 수평적인 교육 환경을 지향을 하고 있는데요. 예를 들면 저희 교육 현장에서 사람들을 만날 때 모두가 닉네임을 씁니다. 왜냐하면 한국에서는 존댓말과 어떤 호칭의 문제로 위계가 되게 많이 지어지는 어떤 문화적 맥락이 있기 때문에 모두가 닉네임을 부르면서 만나고 있어요. 그리고 어떤 선생님이라든지 언니, 형, 누나, 오빠 같은 호칭을 쓰지 않습니다. 그래서 우리가 지금까지 되게 익숙해 온 위계적인 문화에서 많이 벗어나려고 노력을 하고 있는데요. 그런 교육적인 환경을 통해서 조금 우리가 지금까지 정말로 익숙하게 그냥 여겨왔던 것들을 질문하게 하는 그런 환경을 만들려고 노력을 하고 있습니다. 그래서 참여적이고 대화적인 방식의 교육을 지향을 늘 하고 있는데요. 그런 환경을 만드는 것이 왜 중요하냐면 지금까지 우리가 살아오고 있는 이 사회는 어떤 신념, 어떤 군사주의가 만드는 위계와 보호주의 신념이 되게 많이 강한 사회이기 때문에 거기에 대해서 좀 벗어나기 위한 어떤 교육의 목적이 있습니다. 그래서 우리가 지금까지 익숙해온 우리의 일상을 조금 더 낯설게 보고 비판적으로 질문하는 것에서부터 그럴 수 있는 힘이 나온다고 생각하는데요. 물론 그 배경에는 어떤 현실 정치와 우리의 일상을 연결하는 어떤 다양한 연구 활동이 뒷받침이 되어야 합니다. 그래서 교육의 현장이 그 연구 주제들을 조금 더 번역을 해서 일상의 언어로 번역을 해서 사람들과 만날 수 있기 위해서는 조금 더 면밀한 조사와 현장 기반을 한 어떤 연구 결과들이 뒷받침되어야지 사람들을 설득을 할 수 있다고 생각하고요. 그래서 연구와 교육 환경의 조성이 중요하다고 생각합니다. 답이 되었을지 잘 모르겠는데 네, 여기까지 하겠습니다.
Wonderful answer. Thank you very much. Yes, I think often we use the analogy in GCED of the fish in the fishbowl, and you're looking around, you don't see the water because it is the familiar. And it's when you take the fish out of the fishbowl and they have the chance to look back in, it's uncomfortable. They can't breathe, but they see the water. So wonderful answer. We had a question up the back here. I think this might be our last question for the session.
Yes. Sure. Good morning, everyone. My name is Ricardo, representing youth digital movement called Gen Z Talk Timor-Leste from Timor-Leste. As a young person myself, it's always fulfilling and amazing to listen to young people to talk about youth roles and youth engagement, right? But however, it's all there is an issue of we call the tokenistic approach, the tokenistic engagement, and it proven by many research, right? It also shows by many ideas and experiences. And I also would like to quote Ming-Hong also say that you are too young to know anything, right? So it always happens when it comes to youth engagement. So as a young people yourself, how do you think we should tackle this? The tokenistic approach, the tokenistic engagement, and that to engage young people to meaningfully participate, collaborate, and work as an equal partner with the governments, organizations, and agencies. Thank you.
Fabulous question, thank you. And it's a really, really important one in terms of authentic youth engagement and just not tokenism. We have a very short period of time, so I'm going to challenge my contestants in the last round here today to give a 1-minute answer to that question, starting with you, Nora.
Yeah, so thank you for your question, and I believe the credit should be given when it's deserved, and I think part of what you were talking about is where I want to give credit to AppsU for holding such an event and giving us a panel where we can be sitting, because there had been a lot of events where I participated in where youth are just like a checklist. You just sit there and look pretty. You're there at the end of the hall. You can have like a table in the corridor or something. But I think two things we can do for that. One thing is a part that's held on the government itself and people in higher positions, that they have the responsibility to encourage and include youth. But then there's something on our side where we can be active and try to prove ourselves. We need to have a lot of initiatives of approaching them, advocating ourselves and presenting what we work. Here's my plan and here's what I can do.
Fabulous answer, thank you. And yes, very much a two-way street. Ashan, what do you think?
Yes, this is something that I have been grappling with for over years, actually. Like, maybe you have heard of this Roger Hart's ladder of children's participation. So there, like, we have seen these 8 steps where, like, lower the steps, it's more tokenistic. Like, higher you go, it's actual meaningful and inclusive participation that actually makes sense. So I think we need to kind of like see, like, be aware of these mechanisms also. For example, for the last couple of months, I have been participating and also leading many local and regional youth consultations for the Summit of the Youth. But when I look at the impact it created, I'm really, really disappointed. So it's actually, most of the time what happens is it's going to be a box-ticking process for the organizations and different partners of engagements to make sure that they can show, like, young people has been consulted, they have been part of this process. But what actually happens is the impact that we create, the suggestions we give, the consultations we do is actually not going further than that. So I think, of course, these like adult engagement organizations, like the organizations themselves and the governments and also the decision makers, they have a responsibility, an ethical responsibility to kind of make that actually make sense and be very honest about it and be very transparent about it. But at the same time, young people as us, we also can do certain things. There's a lot of advocacy approaches you can take. Keep them accountable, make them follow up with them regularly, and if there has not been any impact created, and if you feel like you have been exploited, don't be afraid to speak up. Hold these individuals accountable, hold the organizations accountable, and make awareness and put them out in the spotlight so they will have to answer. So it's just like that resistance process that Myung has been talking about. So you have to be an activist sometimes in order to become a responsible, engaging global citizen who are also active.
Yeah, as you say, consultation is part one. What happens next? Myung, can I pass over to you for your answer?
말할 기회와 자리는 그냥 만들어지지 않는다고 생각합니다. 말할 기회가 열릴 때까지 기다리다가는 영영 오지 않을 것 같다는 생각에 계속해서 말할 자리들을 스스로 만드는 것이 중요하다고 생각하는데요. 그것을 듣게 하는 것이 중요하다고 생각합니다. 그래서 우리가 말하고 싶은 것을 어떻게 더 효과적으로 임팩트 있게 전달할 것인가라고 하는 것은 트레이닝의 영역이라고도 생각을 해서요. 여기 계신 많은 분들이 하고 계신 것처럼 교육과 트레이닝이 너무 중요하다고 생각을 합니다. 그리고 사실 청년들이 말할 권리가 많이 없었기 때문에 말할 훈련이 되어 있지 않은 것도 사실입니다. 그런 연습이 많이 필요한데요. 그러기 위해서는 내가 어떤 말을 해도 평가받지 않을 수 있고 내가 다른 사람들과 동등한 자리로서 위치로서 말할 수 있는 그런 공동체가 먼저 확립이 돼야 된다고 생각합니다. 그래서 우리 일상에서 그렇게 좀 평등한 대화의 공동체들을 쫌쫌따리 만들어낼 때 청년들이 말할 공간과 기회들이 점점 더 많이 열리지 않을까라고 생각합니다.
Absolutely. Gets back to where we started. It was a beautiful circle there that we need to give voice even to the youngest amongst us, even if it's a small voice in a classroom or a school, because that gives them the courage, the confidence to speak up. We've had 3 fantastic contestants in our first international game show today, but I think you'll all agree that we actually got the prize by hearing them speak. Thank you so much, and thank you so much to our speakers. I'll pass back over to you, Sungmi.
Thank you very much. The insights shared by you have been truly enlightening. We will now take a 30-minute coffee break. Please use this room to refresh yourselves and network with other participants. After the break, we will resume for our breakout sessions. This grand ballroom will be divided into 3 separate rooms to accommodate the concurrent sessions. Please pay attention to the following room assignment. Room number 1 is the room farthest from this stage. Room number 2 is the middle room. Room number 3 is this area with the large stage. Please gather your belongings and after having a coffee break, proceed to the room that you would like to take part in. Also, we encourage you to explore the multiple exhibitions taking place in the lobby area. Your full participation and engagement throughout the day would be greatly appreciated. I will look forward to seeing you at 11:15. Thank you.